hot topic on the morning kick around for Wednesday, April 2nd. I'm Robert. He's Jason. Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us here. Tonight, we'll see history in the U.S. Open Cup. The two professional soccer teams in Chattanooga will face off against each other for the first time in the second round of the U.S. Open Cup. And for those not familiar, what is the history behind this derby? Why is it so fraught, Jason?
Well, I mean, this is basically a story, and there are lots of details here that are, I think, fascinating, and people should dive into them. And we will encourage everybody to go over to protagonistsoccer.com, our friend Dan Vaughn, who's been on the show, and everybody that he works with over there. For the background, there's a good article about this that dropped yesterday. But basically, this comes down to grassroots coming together, a community, a bunch of people getting a team off the ground in Chattanooga in terms of Chattanooga FC, an amateur club that started in 2009. Same year that Peter Vermees started in Kansas City, this team launched. They played in NPSL for 10 years. Yes, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say, so Chattanooga is kind of the blueprint that many of the teams in the 2010s used to create. I mean, DCFC's Sean Mann told me, first time I ever talked to him, we tried to emulate them when they were getting off the ground. Just kind of.
Absolutely. If you think of Detroit City as a unique story and the kind of soccer club that people like to celebrate because they, again, five guys playing in a men's league in Detroit said, why don't we have a team? Let's put one together. You know, they initially enter short season summer soccer with college kids. You know, I remember going out years ago at the invitation of Detroit City, and they were, you know, they talked about how they would put these kids in sort of dorm rooms for the summer so that they could all live together, play together. You know, it was all very like, it wasn't big time, but that was okay, right? It was organic in a lot of ways. I think that word is loaded, and maybe it misses some things about how these teams think about positioning themselves, because what Detroit City did, what Chattanooga did, is made sure that they were sort of attractive as brands, even as they were grassroots as soccer teams, right? There was, let's be conscious of our logo. Let's sell things to people. And again, a lot of this is just civic pride. And when you talk about a city like Chattanooga, which is not a large city, it's not a huge metropolitan area, you're talking about, you know, what do we have here in Chattanooga? The Lookout. So they're still a thing, right? The minor league baseball team. But we've talked about the difference between minor league baseball and lower level soccer. When you have a soccer team that's playing whatever league they're playing in, they matter in a way that a minor league baseball team can't, because the minor league baseball team is serving, generally speaking, there are independent teams, but serving a major league master. So Chattanooga FC launches in 2009. They play in the NPSL, high-level amateur soccer, for 10 years. They never actually win the league, but they generate excitement, and they generate a fan base. And they've got people coming out, very much like Detroit City, who are dedicated to the team, who create an atmosphere. And then USL says, oh, look what's happening in Chattanooga. And somebody says, we'd like to start a team in the USL in Chattanooga, and the Chattanooga Red Wolves are born. And they're born by a Utah property developer named Bob Martino, who purchased territorial rights, right? And that's not a thing that rubs people the right way all the time, because they go, oh, territorial rights? What do you mean? There's already a team there. What territorial rights can you have? But, of course, as we've talked about, Rob, you've got leagues that are operating parallel to one another that have nothing to do with one another, and they're not connected. They may be all operating under the auspices of U.S. Soccer, but they're not connected in any way that would say, oh, there's already a team in Chattanooga, and you can't put another team there, and you can't launch a team because there's already a team. If USL, operating as their own business, wants to put a team there, they can absolutely do it. And when Martino bought because I think the feeling was, Rob, that Chattanooga FC had sort of laid the groundwork, and they weren't a team that had like eaten up all of the market, and the Red Wolves came in thinking we can be the professional team that Chattanooga FC is not.
Yeah, and that rub has kind of extended now into another chapter, because when Chattanooga did professionalize, they went to NISA. And there was a few years there where NISA was getting off the ground. I think that's 18, 19 or so. And then with the Chattanooga Red Wolves getting that USL territorial rights with the
Right.
collapse of NISA, it didn't give
Yeah.
Chattanooga very many
So
options of where to go.
it did put Chattanooga FC in this position of, okay, there's another team in town. We're a short season amateur team, and that's a professional team. And they're going to outspend us, and they're going to outmarket us. And do we just sort of try to occupy this lower level space underneath Chattanooga Red Wolves? Can we live there and still be okay? Or and you look at this story of amateur teams, it's hard not to be ambitious, right? It's hard. It's just sort of mentality. We want to keep growing. And if you keep growing and you're an amateur team, the next step is to go professional. So you could obviously look at this as the Red Wolves pushed Chattanooga FC into a professional mindset. And as you said, because there was already a USL team in town and there's a territorial rights thing happening there, what they did was NISA. And then when NISA collapsed, the only place they could go to be in a professional operating league that was organized and wasn't going to collapse underneath them was to go MLS Next Pro. And that's where they are right now. And they're one of a very small number of independent teams that are in MLS Next Pro at this point.
Yeah, so those two teams taking the field against each other for the very first time, their paths have not crossed. And this is probably another kind of beauty of the Open Cup, like teams in like separate companies, so to speak, actually getting to cross paths. So tonight, round 2. So do you think that if there's anyone that's a fan of Chattanooga, I'm curious to see if the Red Wolves fans have any grudge against the Chattanooga fans at all for anything that might have been said in the interim time between the Red Wolves creation and now, because you'd think that it would kind of be a one-sided grudge from we were here doing our great thing and then this team moved into our area that kind of made things difficult. Do you think that the Red Wolves fan base has any reason to have a grudge against the Chattanooga fans?
Well, only because I'm sure CFC fans have sort of pointed at the Red Wolves and said, they're the interlopers, they're the carpetbaggers, they don't actually represent Chattanooga. I mean, this is something that you and I are not going to be able to speak to because this gets to deeper feelings, again, about Chattanooga as a town, who should represent Chattanooga on a soccer field, and then, again, our connections to our teams and how they manifest when it comes to the structures of American soccer. We've spent so much time recently talking about USL's intent to bring in promotion or relegation if they can get a first division off the ground, and that's people are getting excited about that because of teams like Chattanooga FC. The idea of being a team like them. Now, obviously, they're not going to have access to that system because they're not a USL team, and this isn't going to be open to anybody. It's only going to be open to USL teams, so it's kind of closed, right? But the idea is that we as a country have the potential, we imagine we do, have the potential to have a lot more clubs like Chattanooga FC, like Detroit City, that are sort of organized by people whose first concern is the love of the game, not making money or spending incredible amounts of money to meet an expansion fee demand or to build glittering facilities. Yeah, that might be the goal one day, but that's not the only kind of soccer. It might feel more authentic to be connected to a team like Chattanooga FC than to be connected to a team that, in this case, is Chattanooga Red Wolves, even though, again, depending on your perspective, the Red Wolves are sort of the underdog. Certainly for USL fans, they would hold the Red Wolves up as the underdog as compared to any MLS team that's out there. But again, it's sort of like all wrapped up in the psychology of us as American soccer fans, and I think that's interesting. And if the Red Bull fans have any real beef or have any real grudge to hold against Chattanooga FC fans, it's just that thing of, oh, you're not authentic enough, and feeling judged by that and pushing back against it.
So this Chattanooga derby, I don't know if there is a specific, I see Chattanooga two-step perhaps, but Chattanooga FC taking on Chattanooga Red Wolves tonight at 7 at Finley Stadium. Curious to see what will play out there. I'm sure U.S. Open Cup fans that are tuning in, that will be on their radar. Do you have any other further thoughts on round 2 of the U.S. Open Cup or this kind of Chattanooga derby before we move on?
Well, no, I mean, obviously, look, I'm excited to see how this plays out as a neutral observer right now. I am inclined, I'll be honest with you. I'm inclined towards the Chattanooga FC side of this, right? As a soccer fan, as somebody who wants to see the sport grow, as somebody who knows their story a little bit, I'm somebody who's inclined to that. But I don't know that we can throw the baby out with the bathwater and start turning clubs like the Red Wolves into the villain in this situation, right? Because there aren't enough clubs that have stood the test of time. Like, if you ask me if I had a time machine and I could go back and change whether or not the Red Wolves launched in Chattanooga, if I had the possibility of doing that, I probably would say, yes, I would do that. I would prefer that not happen. But I don't know exactly if that would be better. I don't know if that branch in terms of history would have been better for Chattanooga soccer or not. Again, this is the first time these teams will ever have played. I would rather this be more often, but again, our league systems have created this situation where it's really, really tough. I will also say that, one thing that we should note about Chattanooga FC is that they were, I believe, the first club in American soccer to have a fan ownership scheme. And you could buy a share of Chattanooga FC. And there are restrictions on that because of PLS, which we've talked about on this very program in a different video with Peter Wilt, who advocates for the ability of fans to own their clubs in a socios kind of model a la Spain or a 50+1 model a la Germany. But Chattanooga FC does have fan ownership, and I think that again makes it feel authentic. It makes us feel connected to these clubs. And I would love to see a team like that succeed. I don't know they have to do it in the Open Cup, but of course that would get them more headlines. It would get them an opportunity to draw some more attention to what they're doing.
The first Chattanooga derby tonight at 7. Of course, these first two rounds can be found on YouTube before third round and beyond. Switch over to the CBS networks. You got another point?
Now, I just want to say, wouldn't it be incredible if Chattanooga FC was playing on CBS, on Golasso, playing on that platform and getting some attention via the studio coverage, the pregame coverage, all of those things? That would certainly be big for them.
If you haven't clicked subscribe already to Morning Kickaround, please do so now. The numbers are doing well, and the show gets better and better as those subscriber numbers go up. You can even hit the thanks button, throw us a little bit of cash, help us become more sustainable, cover our expenses, and then perhaps even give us the opportunity to grow the program, maybe even extend and do more with the show. Follow along on social media at MKickaround, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky amongst the platforms the show exists on. You can write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. You got a partnership idea, a sponsorship idea, or just write us a note. We've gotten a few good ones there. So morningkickaround@gmail.com.
Send us your story. Send us your grassroots, lower level, untold American soccer story. Send it to us.
Yeah, those are fun. And U.S. Open Cup, great opportunity for those stories. Some of my favorite American soccer memories inextricably linked to U.S. Open Cup matches. We are also a podcast. So if you like the show and you like to listen on podcasts, we got you set up. Look for Morning Kickaround on your favorite podcast platform. And one further note, you can also support and get extra content at coffee.com/morningkickaround. So head over there if you haven't done so already.